After studying this module, you shall be able to know about how to erect temporary mortuary, various sections which are part of this mortuary like photography, fingerprinting, dentistry, what is the specific role of forensic medicine experts, and how this procedure of matching is done. The mortuary branch. An early and important decision will need to be made by the investigating in charge or the director of victim identification in consultation with the pathologist about the location of the mortuary branch if it is not pre-planned. An ideal venue such as well-equipped forensic medicine department with forensic anthropology and forensic radiology facilities will rarely be available. So, a mortuary will probably need to be established on the premises at the site itself, affording the best possible facilities in the circumstances. So, wherever the mortuary is situated, it is important to ensure that there is adequate protection from the elements, suitable accommodation, running water, drainage and security. Ideally, there will be facilities to keep bodies refrigerated, not frozen, and consideration could be given to acquiring refrigerated trucks and portable air cooling units, or to using ice rinks, providing the bodies and body bags are not in direct contact with the ice. It may even be necessary, for example, in remote areas, to establish this branch on the scene itself, using tents or portable structures for the various tasks to be carried out. In such cases, careful pre-planning is required to ensure that suitable accommodation is also provided for all the personals. However, it is generally agreed that the benefits of working in a well-equipped mortuary, even a temporary one, far outweigh the difficulties incurred in transporting bodies away from the scene. Body movement unit, that is the part and parcel. Body movement unit is responsible for the reception of bodies, for their storage before and after examination, and for movement within and out of the mortuary. Strict control of the movement of every body or part and of its location at any given time is necessary to ensure an effective flow through the various examinations to be carried out. And this section should be headed by a senior police officers. The body should be moved on the wheeled trolleys or the tables. Other methods will prove to be less efficient and more physically tiring for the staff. A body reception point must be selected close to the storage area, where the receiving officer will take responsibility for each body or part brought in. He will need to maintain a body storage list showing the body reference number, date, time, from whom received and where is stored. Storage may depend on the condition of the body and may affect the sequence in which it is to be examined. These details should be discussed with a pathologist. If a body has been received without a reference number, that is, has been removed from the disaster site before being numbered, it must be given a mortuary reference number, which consisting of a letter starting from M or maybe P, followed by a number which must be attached to the body. Suitable labels and marker pens, pencils should form part of the mortuary equipment. It may well be necessary to begin filling in a DVI form at this point itself. Whenever a body is taken from storage to examination, this must be indicated on the appropriate storage sheet with date and time and to whom handed over. When it is returned from examination, this again is indicated on the storage sheet and the receiving officer will then resume responsibility for the body. Facilities for the specialized work of embalming may have to be established within or close to the body movement unit. It should be remembered that bodies may have to be re-examined and therefore only identified bodies should be embalmed. Embalming, coffining and the storage of coffins will require substantial space. Before this unit hands body to the body release unit for disposal, permission must be obtained from the investigator in charge or the director of victim identification to ensure that no further examination will be necessary, and simultaneously a death certificate should be issued. PM records unit, the other important part of that temporary mortuary. The PM record unit is responsible for collating the postmortem descriptions and findings for each individual body. Each body to be moved into the examination room for physical description should be placed in the custody of a forensic medicine expert or the PM records officer. He should follow the body through all the examination stages until it can be returned for the storage. He should sign his name on the appropriate storage sheet when he takes over the body and should have his own PM checklist signed by the receiving officer when he returns it. Photography and fingerprinting takes far less time than the external and internal examination. The PM record officer may therefore call a number of a member of PM photography or the PM fingerprint unit at the appropriate times. Member of these sections will keep their own records. The PM records officer only needs to mark the time and the name of the specialist involved on his checklist and indicate whether photographs and fingerprints have been taken. The PM records officer will be responsible for recording under dictation the physical description and features, particulars of clothing and property, and the autopsy findings. Dentists will often operate in teams, one of whom will complete the relevant part of this DVI form, again because of the specific terminology used, whilst others will cooperate in displaying, cleaning and inspecting teeth or removing jaws. When physical examination are completed, the body must be rebagged before being returned to the storage. Again, the body and bag must bear the correct number. The PM record officer should check once more that he is in possession of all the parts of the DVI form concerning that body before he hands the set of documents to the PM files unit. If documents are missing because of ongoing specific examination, this fact can easily be established from the PM checklist. Then coming on to the postmortem photography unit. The photographs, preferably in color, should be taken of each body during the various stages of examination. The photographer should always take full body and full face pictures as well as close-ups of specific external findings. He will also be needed during the ensuing internal examination for continuity. The body reference number should be clearly visible in each photograph. Photographers will keep their own records of exposure for each film, listing the film number, exposure number, body reference number or item, date and time. The record should be signed by the photographer before being handed together with the exposed film to the PM photography unit for the processing. Then coming on to the PM fingerprint unit. This fingerprint unit might well be the smallest of the body examination units, as the procedures may require fewer resources depending upon the condition of the body. It will be again the responsibility of the PM records officer, that is the doctor or the forensic medicine expert, to call a PM fingerprint unit officer at the appropriate time, which is likely to be after cloths have been removed and while clothing and property are being recorded. The fingerprint expert must ensure that every set of prints is marked with the body reference number. He will keep his own consecutive list of bodies fingerprinted, again date, time, reference number, remarks, etc. Then the post-mortem property unit. The mortuary attendants will be responsible for opening body bags in the presence of a pathologist and the PM records officer. The latter will be responsible for listing all property on the DVI form. If loose or separately bagged property is found within the body bag, this should be described and listed first. The clothing should then be searched and any additional items should be described and listed. Clothing should be systematically removed from the body, examined for names and laundry or dry cleaning marks, described and listed. Finally, rings, watches can be removed, described and listed. All property should be bagged, clearly numbered and cross-referenced with the body number. Then PM medical unit. A forensic medicine expert must always be present during the external examination and description of the naked body. Particular attention must be paid to all possible identifying features and important findings should be photographed. It is recommended that an appropriate sample be obtained at this stage in case later DNA analysis is deemed necessary. Obtaining, handling, storing and transferring such specimens is the responsibility of the forensic doctor and forensic odontologist operating in the PM medical unit. Then coming on to the PM dental unit. The dental examinations can only be carried out by qualified dentists, preferably forensic odontologist. Laying out, cleaning and describing dentistry in detail can be a lengthy process and dental examinations may therefore delay the flow of bodies through the examination room. If required, the PM dental unit will arrange for dental X-ray apparatus to be set up at a convenient place within the examination room itself. bearing in mind precautions with regard to radiations and power supply. In such cases, bodies will have to be moved to this location for exposures. Finally, if teeth or jaws are taken from a body, this unit will again be responsible for all further handling and for the proper recording of the additional data. Then coming on to the next segment, that is the identification center. The identification center compares AM and PM documents forwarded from the AM and PM file units. The center comprises a number of specialized sections responsible for comparing the technical portions of the antemortem and postmortem data. Results obtained from the specialized sections are fed back to the identification file section to be combined into one master list of results. For practical reasons, antemortem and postmortem file sections should be established close to their respective sources of information. The identification center, on the other hand, can be set up independently wherever adequate facilities are available. For example, offices, a copying service, a computer assistant, etc. However, it will prove far more convenient if the center can be established as an extension either of the missing persons branch or of the mortuary branch. The identification center can save considerable time by using a computerized matching program to suggest the most likely possible matches quickly and to establish potential eliminations with a high degree of probability. It is essential to remember, however, that any computer program is merely an aid and that final conclusions and decisions can only be made after personal evaluation of all the available data. Then the specialized sections like identification center photography section. While this section is established to provide photographic records of the findings made by the expert sections, there may well be other photographs including among the AM data on the missing persons. Comparing such private photographs with the postmortem photographs to establish common features may prove helpful, and these may include hairstyle, deformities, etc. Then the identification center fingerprint section. This section will be manned by experts trained in assessing fingerprint evidence. Its first task is to classify all the PM prints taken by the PM fingerprint unit. Although fingerprint evidence is not dependent upon sex, race and age, it may be more expedient in disasters to file and compare them based on such groupings rather than by conventional classification. Whichever system is used, AM and PM fingerprints both need to be filed under similar categories. Then identification center property section. The identification center property section will deal with the identification of all personal effects removed from the bodies, often in liaison with the identification center photography section. In principle, its staff will compare written data from antemortem reports and postmortem property descriptions with the actual property removed from the body and with the photographs of such items. They will have the advantage of being able to re-examine property before reaching a conclusion. As stated above, property is of limited value for elimination or identification but could well support other evidence. This section will also be responsible for determining ownership of other property recovered independently from the disaster scene and contained in E-numbered bags. Identification center medical section. The specific features, external or internal, may offer good chances of identification and elimination. This section should therefore conduct its comparisons methodically and in detail. When all comparisons have been completed, these sections must begin trying to match body parts and to bring the various parts of a single body together, wherever possible. The use of a standard anatomic sketch of the human body included in the DVI, AM and PM set of forms may be of assistance in this respect. Then identification center dental section. A large number of specific details can be compared in this section, which gives its particular potential for bringing about eliminations as well as identifications. The identification center dental section may also be required to examine any fragmentary dental remains and cross-check them with the individual bodies. When there is a match, the identification center file sections must ensure that all set of documents relating to dental features are attached to the relevant set of documents for the rest of the body. Then coming on to the DNA analysis. Because the analytical procedures used in genetic identifications are extremely sensitive, it is essential to prepare, preserve and transfer all samples to a laboratory which uses precisely defined methods. such as the sampling should take place during the autopsy and the sample should be transferred to a forensic science lab immediately. The samples must be taken from the least affected material, for example, cardiac blood, bone marrow, teeth, brain tissue, muscle, bone or hair. The persons taking the sample must wear protective clothing, gloves, face mask. Details of the procedure to be used must be provided by the laboratory. Then the important section is the identification board. The responsibility of the identification board is to check the results of comparisons made by the various specialized sections, locate and reconcile possible inconsistencies, and combine the results into one final list of positive identification. The board will ultimately be responsible for the final identification of each individual victim and should therefore be composed of the most experienced identification experts involved in the whole operation. For example, the chiefs of the various specialized sections headed by the Director of Identification or his deputy. Sets of AM and PM documents for all identified bodies should be filed in pairs in individual binders, each of which should be marked with the victim's name and body number. The binders should then be filed numerically. The identification board will need to decide whether and when individual identification documents should be compiled and death certificate issued. For example, as soon as identity is confirmed, once a day or at least frequent intervals. It must be borne in mind that as long as there are still unidentified bodies, there will always be the possibility that some or all of those previously identified have to be re-examined. For this reason, body release should not be unduly precipitated and embalming, for instance, should not be carried out until absolutely necessary. The body release section. The body release will involve a number of practical issues most effectively dealt with by a specific body release section, working in liaison with the body movement section in the mortuary center. The body release section should be the office through which the Director of Victim Identification informs families that all procedures in respect of their relatives have been completed. This information should always reach the family before any relevant press releases are made. There will inevitably be a number of questions to answer before a body can be repatriated, and it is recommended that a checklist be drawn up. Relatives may wish to view the deceased before burial or cremation. In such cases, the Director of Victim Identification should be consulted. By referring to the PM documents, he can advise on the condition of bodies and their suitability for viewing. Substantial assistance can be given by social services personnel to visiting relatives and indeed to the staff required to work in this area of the operation. A large amount of space and sufficient personnel will be required to carry out the wide range of duties performed in the body release section. For example, coffins must be ordered and stored, and arrangements may have to be made for embalming, facial reconstruction of those to be viewed, shrouding and coffining. If metal lids are used, they will require soldering. One or more funeral ceremonies, even for those not identified, transportation, etc. Many of the times in India, because of if it is a Hindu body and all, these questions does not arise. So task becomes a bit easy. The Director of Victim Identification will issue a release certificate for each body identified. It should bear the body reference number and the name of the person whose body has been identified, as well as checklist of accompanying documents, that is identification document, death certificate, copy of the autopsy report where requested, the body pass, as well as the instructions given by the family, the date and time when the coffin left the section and by whom and where it was taken. It should be signed upon completion by the officer in charge of the body release section and returned to the identification file section. To summarize the topic of DVI, the strict control of the movement of each body or part and of its location at any given point of time is necessary to ensure an effective flow through the various examinations to be carried out. It should be remembered that bodies may have to be re-examined, and therefore only identified bodies should be embalmed. Embalming, coffining and the storage of coffins will require substantial space. So the facilities should be created for that. The PM Records Unit is responsible for collating the postmortem descriptions and findings for each individual body. Each body to be moved into the examination room for physical description should be placed in the custody of a forensic medicine expert. The Identification Center compares antemortem and postmortem documents forwarded from the antemortem and postmortem files units. The center comprises a number of specialized sections responsible for comparing the technical portions of the antemortem and postmortem data. The body release section should be the office through which the Director of Victim Identification informs families that all procedures in respect of their relatives have been completed. This information should always reach the family before any relevant press releases are made.